Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is Three Men in a Box with Matt Grissom and Quentin Mills. On Friday, September 29, 2023, the last Friday in September. Holy cow, here comes October. For baseball fans, it's great. Playoffs, and World Series, and we got one more month till November 1st. One of my favorite days of the year is college basketball starts up, and the reigning national champs, the UConn Huskies, will be looking to defend their title. Big feat. The Big East is loaded again. Creighton, I think, will have something to say, and it might have been Matt or someone talking about Villanova. Villanova back in action. After their first year without Jay Wright, will definitely be better this year. But we got the full wishbone today with myself, Q, and Matt. So let's, no pun intended, cue them up. Quentin Mills and Matt Grissom.
Queued them up.
I like it.
What's up, gentlemen? What's up? Glad everyone is back. Q, you were missed a couple of weeks off. Doing some research, doing some family things, and we held the fort down, but glad to see you back, sir.
2's different than 3, so it's nice to be back, filling the boxes up, and hopefully we fill up our betting accounts this weekend in week 5.
He took time off just like the UConn Huskies last weekend. What was I thinking? Cover plus 22. They didn't stand a chance. They didn't get off the bus at their own stadium. Just pathetic. What are we doing here?
Matt, and I'm going to tell you, that was a great spot for them, too, with Duke playing Notre Dame this week. So I don't think your eyes were wrong. I just think Coach Mora and the football team, you're right, never got off the bus. What a difference a year makes. Their offense. Listen, the Duke defense is good. I don't think it's the 85 Bears good as some people think it is. I think Sam Hartman will expose them this weekend. A big spot for Notre Dame on a bounce back. Be interesting to see how they do bounce back with the last second loss to Ohio State. Want to start with Q. Q, it's been a while since we talked. I actually think it's been a while since it was Florida at Utah, where Utah kind of sort of had their way with them. But since then, a resilient Gator team that has played some great football in a tough spot this week at at Kentucky, short favorites at Kentucky. Give us your thoughts on Florida, where they are today, and your thoughts going into Kentucky on tomorrow.
I'm optimistic. I've actually I try to bet my team objectively. I think Matt can attest to that. I think Florida actually comes out of Lexington with the win. You know, credit to Kentucky over the last 5 years, really building that program. But I think with Devin Leary, they kind of took a step back after Will Levis left. He's already got 5 picks, and we're already heading in to week 5. They're just not the same team they were the past 5 years. I think Florida having that bad game against Charlotte last weekend really opened up their eyes. I mean, we saw them have a rough game against Utah and then bounce back and beat a tough Tennessee team. Now, obviously, you had the fortune of being at home, but I think Florida is going to benefit from the Kentucky game being at noon, not a primetime game. So I think that affords them a great opportunity. And listen, for the guys that are bashing Graham Mertz, I think we're watching 2 different games because he hasn't been explosive, but they haven't asked him to be. He's been extremely efficient. I think he's been an upgrade from Emory Jones and co outside of Kyle Trask. they get some guys back. They missed half their O-line last week. I think that's going to help them. I think they see Etienne's going to feed the ball this weekend. They get Trey Wilson back, an explosive true freshman. I like the Gators on the money line, to be honest.
I agree with you. I think that's the sharper side. I think the public is looking, as we talked about backstage, about trends and Kentucky. And listen, again, no knock to Kentucky. They have built up that program. It used to be just a basketball program, and their football team is back on the map. And hats off to them. But I do also lean to your Gator side there, Matt. I worked a festival all day Saturday. Anthony Pepe's Food Trucks of America. We were in Salem, Massachusetts, Saturday and Sunday, and we were there from 6 to 6 Saturday. And then I got back to my and I was getting all ready for Notre Dame and Ohio State. I got my dinner right there, and I turned on LSU and Arkansas. I never changed the station. A hell of a game. I thought you had them there. I really did. You had opportunities. Thoughts on the game last Saturday, first of all, and second of all, now you got Jimbo Fisher and this A&M team who's catching stride and moving in the right direction. Thoughts on that game this week?
Well, so the LSU game, that one did surprise me. I thought you were going to see one of two Razorback teams show up. You were going to see the deflated Sam Pittman's kind of losing the locker room. You don't lose to BYU team. And then you saw the team that did show up, and that was a team that can still compete and has the talent across the field to compete with the big boys of the SEC. Now, I'm not as high as some people are on LSU, so I don't put a whole lot of credit into how well we played, but I'm definitely not high on this A&M team. And to transition into that, I made this number 4.5. I think Arkansas, like Q was saying backstage, we tend to always play Jimbo Fisher close and this rivalry close, at least for the first half. So this may be another one where I go back to the first half team total over points. We are facing Bobby Petrino as the OC for A&M, so that should be interesting. I've got to feel like he really wants to win this game. He almost beat us last year as a Missouri State head coach. But I think it's all going to boil down to if we can get some pressure from that right side now facing Max Johnson, who's a lefty. I think Arkansas can keep this within a touchdown. Now, the line did open right around 6.5, 7 at circa. I was able to hit that. I actually bought it up to 7.5 before I left town, but now getting down to like 5.5, 6, wherever the number is, that's probably right where it's going to land. So I would pay the extra juice personally to get 7, but I do think the Hogs can keep it close, especially for the first half. And like I said, team total over is probably going to be a play for me too.
Guys, for years and years upon years, the SEC has reigned supreme in football. And you got the Georgia Bulldogs going for a three-peat. Bama with already one loss this year, a home loss to Texas. LSU opening day lost to Florida State. I'm not saying it's down, because when you watch SEC football, I mean, it's like apples and oranges, okay? But there's some other conferences out there, and then me and Matt talked about them last week. My darling before the year started, my sleeper, my team to shock the world and get to the Final Four this year was Washington. They got a quarterback with Penix Jr. Their offense is electric. They got 2 wide receivers who will probably be first rounders coming up in the draft sooner than later. My point is Pac-12. Big Ten, Ohio State, we know of course, we know of Michigan. Penn State, no slouch this year. You go over to the Big 12 in Texas. I'm going to go to you first, Matt. SEC, where it usually is, overrated or wait and see right now?
I hate to say that the conference is overrated, because I just don't think we're getting a quarterback play. I think you could base everything around that, and as well as give credit to the Pac-12, where they have outstanding quarterback play. I ran the numbers on just Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Cameron Ward, and Michael Penix Jr. These guys have combined to only throw 3 interceptions. Meanwhile, they've thrown 62 touchdowns. You're just seeing outrageously good performances out of quarterbacks in really all the other conferences, but mainly the Pac-12, and you're just not getting it out of the SEC. I mean, honestly, you've got Joe Milton, you've got Graham Mertz, you've got KJ Jefferson. You could throw him in there. Radler's hit or miss. I mean, you're not putting up the numbers they are in the Pac-12, though. So you would like to say that it's because of the defense in the SEC, but I don't really think that that's the case either. I think Georgia and Alabama they're susceptible to be scored on. So I think it's a wait and see at this point, but you can't hide from the fact that the Pac-12's quarterback play is the most impressive in the country right now.
Q?
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of good points. One point I think, and it's maybe I just feel this way, but I think we got enamored with the flashy offense of the SEC, especially before NIL in the last few years up leading to it. People forget that the SEC used to be smash mouth, run it down your throat football, kind of very defensive minded. And I think we're slowly starting to get maybe back to that. Obviously, I think NIL has affected the talent pool. It's not just going to the SEC. You know, these kids are going where the money is. And if USC and Washington and all these other places are willing to pay for that star player, kids are going to go and take the shining moment now versus being next in line waiting 3 years at Bama. So I think that has a lot to play into it as well. But I also think the SEC is just so good from top to bottom in the sense of maybe not their lower tiers, but those lower tiers or mid tiers in a lot of other conferences, they beat each other up. They I think people forget, like, very defensive, hard-hitting teams, they really take a toll. And I think the SEC actually shoots themselves in the foot being so good and so well-rounded conference-wide, whereas the Pac-12, I mean, they're having an up year this year, but traditionally it's not a strong conference. And I think, unfortunately, without those star quarterbacks to kind of hide that in the SEC, it's just making it look a little worse. But it's still good football. And I still – when push comes to shove, I understand the Pac-12 is kind of what everybody wants to see right now. I think the SEC in playoffs, until they lose, you have to kind of roll with them in a playoff situation. And right now, I kind of have to still side with them until I'm proven otherwise.
So with those statements that you both made, I'll ask you, Matt, this. From just the eye test the first month in, I'm going to say LSU and quarterback play can go into Tuscaloosa and score enough points to beat a Bama team, can probably score on Georgia and beat a Georgia team. Matt, am I crazy? I mean, if you're looking for quarterback play, their defense is not the Georgia defense, not the Bama defense, but I'll take the edge at quarterback right now, and I think that they can score on anyone, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, UAB had 250 passing yards and 2 touchdowns against Georgia last week. I mean, I think you could take any of the top, 15 teams at least and take them and put them in Athens or Tuscaloosa, and they're going to put up points.
I agree 100%. Before we get to some of your picks, each of you guys, Q, I work the home games for the BC Eagles. I will be at Chestnut Hill probably while you guys are still sleeping, getting ready. It's Parents' Week. It's going to be a huge, huge game for BC. Their first 2 home games, unimpressive. A overtime loss to UNI, a weather-delayed win against Holy Cross, which they should have lost. Should have beat Florida State. They lost 31-29, 19 penalties. Then they traveled their first road game last week to Louisville. Just got boat race. Never should have got off the bus. Now coming home, 3.5-point favorites against your Virginia Woo-Haws. What do you think Virginia's going to do? Can Virginia do anything here? Should BC be on upset alert?
I think so. And the reason I say it is I think Calandria has the ability to keep BC honest. He can kind of scramble if need be. He throws, maybe more than he should, but he's a kid that has nothing to lose on a bad team. So air it out and make something happen. And he's had some passes go his way. We saw that first wild touchdown against Maryland. He's fallen over, throws it, and it's caught. Then you see, he leads UVA down the field late in the game against NC State, who traditionally has a decent defense, and he was able to make the play. I think they're playing carefree. I think Virginia is one of the best losing teams in the country, if that makes sense. Like, I think they're not a slouch by any means. You just can't run over them as if it's just a walkthrough, because they're going to gun and try to beat anybody, and they don't care if they lose, and they don't care, what it's going to take. They're not going to change their style or anything like that. They're there to see what guys are going to be the future next year. And I think Tony Elliott's going to have those boys prepared. I think Boston College's whole season kind of revolved around that Florida State gut-wrenching loss. They win that. I think things are looking bright. Obviously, they lose a tough one. What do they have to play for this year? I think UVA has more to play for. I actually put UVA in a teaser, but I think UVA could actually win outright and get one of those wins for Calandria. I like the kid. He's a gunslinger.
All right, Matt, it's your turn. We got a full slate of games. I'll let you start with a couple of the plays that you got on the board, and then we'll jump over to Q, and then we'll go back and forth there.
All right. I'm still putting some in. I'm glad that you didn't have me talk about Virginia, because I don't want to watch any Virginia football for the rest of the season after they were on Thursday night a couple weeks ago. But starting from the top, I did take the Arkansas Razorbacks plus 7.5. Shocker, not a homer pick. My number was 4.5. I think it's too light. I'm still looking for a team total for the first half, but keep that in your back pocket. Georgia minus 13.5. I did have to pay $150 for it, but just I can't believe that they're laying this short number against an Auburn team that looked abysmal last weekend against Texas A&M, only scoring 10 points. I've got to believe that Georgia can drag this thing out, even if it's a 24-10 type game. I think Georgia should win that and cover. Another one, Kansas. I just like this Jayhawks team. I know Q's high on them. They're playing Texas ahead of the Red River rivalry. I can't talk today. Red River rivalry, the shootout. But I think this may be a slight look ahead spot. Jalen Daniels, he's a very talented quarterback. I think he could give Texas some fits. And then I went to so Michigan has not covered. Neither has Georgia, for what it's worth. I'm on both of them this week to finally do it. I think Michigan has a really good chance to just blow out this Nebraska team. They had a slow start last week. I think they just get right, and especially if Jeff Sims plays for Nebraska, who's not a very good quarterback. Michigan minus 17, 18, whatever. I think this is a 3-touchdown game. My number actually came to 20.5, so I like it up to 20. But I just think Michigan gets right here, and they finally get that cover, just like Georgia. And then the last one that I put out, I think Notre Dame, like you said, they've got a tough spot here going to Duke, who Riley Leonard's been playing really well, but I don't really know how much stock you put into their win over Clemson. Yes, it was impressive, but they also kind of got handed that game by Clemson there with a couple of turnovers on the goal line. I just don't know how serious this Duke team is, but I do think Notre Dame is very good. I mean, they should have beaten Ohio State. Let's call it what it is. That was just terrible by Marcus Freeman. I think he gets the troops rallied. They go and respond with a big win over Duke this weekend.
What did you get for a number on Kansas? Did you get 24 and a hook? 20?
No, it's 17. I got 17.5.
With Kansas?
Yes.
And then you said, what about Notre Dame? Did you get 5?
5.5. My number was
5.5.
8.5. I get that it's a tough spot for Notre Dame. Maybe they're hanging their heads a little bit, but I think Notre Dame wins by at least a touchdown.
All right. Q?
Give you a little Friday night action. I like BYU tonight on the money line. Emory Jones, I know him all too well in Gainesville. I mean, Cincinnati's got a decent defense, but I think BYU with Keaton Slovis getting back home is going to be the difference in this game. You know, they played a tough back-to-back weeks at Arkansas, at Kansas. I thought they played pretty well on both. They actually they were in that Kansas game late, and then they just had a couple bad picks towards the end, and I think a fumble. But they're in that game, and I think now getting to come back home, you know, I think it's going to be a tough game for Cincinnati. It's late. It's a 10 or 10:30 start time. They're used to that in BYU. Since he's not used to that, and I think that's going to be the difference. I tease that with Florida as well. I know obviously Florida plays at noon on Saturday, but I really like that teaser. You can get BYU. I did a 7-point up to 4.5, but I also took them on the money line. And then on the other side of that, you get Florida at 9.5. Typically, the Florida-Kentucky game isn't a blowout by any means. It's a less than 10-point score. So I like that. I obviously took Florida plus 3.5 as well on the initial line. I'm putting a half unit on the money line. Like we talked earlier, I really like that team. And then a stat that I forgot, Billy Napier is 17-5-1 covering the spread with 10 outright straight-up wins out of those 17 covers. So the guy's a phenom when he's playing as the underdog, and I like that team. I'm on Kansas. I jumped on that line immediately at the plus 17.5. People forget Jalen Daniels had that Kansas team 5-0 last year before TCU came in. He gets hurt in that game. They should have won that game. I think this is a game where he's excited to kind of have that big-time, primetime game again and really show what he's made of. And Kansas, since 2010, they've covered like 6 times against Texas, and they've had like 2 straight-up wins. For some reason, Texas struggles to put away Kansas, and I think even though Kansas is on the road, you've got the guy who you want at quarterback, and he's going to spark this team, and they're going to be motivated. So I really like that. Matt really talks me into the 13.5 with Georgia. I do think the game's going to start slow, so don't panic. We got to realize Carson Beck's still kind of trying to figure out his way as a starter. The defense is still good. Auburn can't move the ball. I think even though it's at home, they'll keep it close in the first half, but I think Georgia pulls away and wins by 2 touchdowns late. So I am leaning to Notre Dame. This is the first time game day is going to be at Duke on the football side of things. What does that do for the team? You know, you kind of get the bright lights. Sam Hartman coming off a tough loss, really didn't have a great game, in my opinion, statistically. He's probably going to want to show off, you know, kind of what he's capable of. I think Ohio State played lights out. So last week, you know, Duke, again, we talk about the defense. I think maybe they're slightly overrated. So I'm leaning that way for sure. I haven't put it in, but I think that's going to go. And then Arkansas, I'm going to put them in as soon as we get off at the line. Arkansas plays that team really tough. Jimbo Fisher, automatic fade for me. I do think they didn't lose much when Weigman went out. Johnson is a good quarterback, but and Matt can probably touch on this. It does sound like Arkansas is going to get Sanders back, so that's going to make them even better. I really like Arkansas to keep it within 7, if not win the game.
It wouldn't be complete show without us talking for a few seconds before we wrap things up. Last week, I thought my best play of the weekend, hands down, was the Oregon team total over 45.5 against Primetime, Coach Prime, and the Buffaloes. Now, Matt, you got me tongue tied here. The Colorado Buffaloes. Put up 35 in the first half, scored 7 on their first drive. They got 42 and then stuck on stupid. So now you got a USC team traveling to Colorado, still no Travis Hunter. And that's where I got the 24 and the 20.5. So all mixed up here. I think the under over is up to like 72 or 73.5 now. A USC team that's favored by 3 touchdowns. a team total of 48.5. So I'll go to you first, Matt. Does Coach Prime try to take the air out of the ball? Can you imagine me saying this? Play a little keep away and say, hey, I know we got boat raced in Oregon. Even with the loss, we're going to be 3-2. We're still looking to get to a bowl game, but we covered the spread. Or is he going to come out here, guns a-blazing, Khalib versus his son, and prove the world that, we're for real here?
I think you've got to attack this USC Trojans defense through the air. I think you saw Drew Pine do it. He kind of picked them apart, and I mean, he had a pretty impressive game. They struggled with ASU last week. I think Colorado is actually in a pretty good spot to get some credibility back after that blowout loss. This USC defense is not as good as Oregon's defense, and they're back at home. So I didn't give it out as a play because I had USC in the look ahead minus 14.5, but I did take Colorado plus 22.5 to have a nice little 8-point middle. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think let's not write the Buffs off yet. They're probably going to lose this game, but I think they can keep it within the number.
Q?
Yeah, just to echo Matt, I think if they played close last week, I think we'd maybe approach this game differently. But, Deion's going to take that as a disrespectful loss, and he's going to bring that, and they're going to kind of go back to that motto. It's personal, right? You don't want to get blown out by back-to-back teams in back-to-back weeks. And Oregon is a true national title contender, in my opinion. I don't quite think USC is. Their defense just can't hold up, in my opinion, in a playoff setting. I mean, Caleb Williams is legit. So I think they're while the over is pretty high, especially with the running clock, you start getting into field goals. If you're in an over, it could look pretty dicey. But I think the Buffs actually score some points here and keep it within that number. It's 20.5. I'm probably, if I was to bet it, I would at least maybe either tease it to get way over the 21 or buy the extra point and get that 21 and a hook just to feel comfortable with that 3 touchdown spread. So I think they actually keep it with that number as well.
The scroll has been going the whole time. We can obviously follow Matt at Grissom Tweets at the NCAA Insiders, at Quentin Mills, at Q Millie, and at the Notebook Wager 1. But I like to always close out with you guys telling everyone where they can find all your work and your amazing work, not just college baseball, college football. And then as of November 1st, we'll be into some college hoops as well. So we can't wait for that. But Q, tell them where they can find all your work.
Yeah, at Q Millie on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Notebook Wagering with the guy Smitty. We brought Smitty on for college football. He's kind of more college basketball guy, so expect him to really turn things around and make our show even better for college basketball. And Matt and I'll tell you what, college baseball is right around the corner. I'm starting to look at some fall stuff, so it's getting me a little excited. Follow us for that. I'm going to be retweeting a bunch of stuff here for college baseball, and keep following our plays on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and at NCAA Insiders. We live stream every Friday, and we bet, you can always find our plays and they're free. So why not take advantage of winning picks?
Matt?
Just like you said, follow us along. We track every bet, NCAAinsiders.com. And then on X, I'm at Grissom Tweets, and I got a 10.5 Arkansas team total first half line. Hammer that over. We're going to score points on this Texas A&M team. So cheers, cash tickets. Jeff, thanks as always for having us on. It's good to have Q back.
We are super stoked to have the Wishbone here. Don't forget, guys, I am a diehard Nebraska fan. So before, you didn't know the real good Nebraska teams, but I was an 80s and 90s Nebraska guy when we were winning national titles. 4th and 8, call a timeout, get to the line, look the defense straight in the face and say, we're running the ball right at you, and you couldn't stop it. And I miss those days, but they'll never be back in Lincoln. But they'll learn the hard way when Harbaugh and the Wolverines come into town and first blink, it's 20-0 because I don't know how Nebraska's going to score. I think the under over on the game's like 39 or something. And it'll probably be, 37-3 Michigan final. So great to have the boys back. Please go follow them. Quentin Mills at Q Millie, Matt Grissom at Grissom Tweets. Follow them both at the NCAA Insiders and at Notebook Wager. In about 10, 15 minutes, myself and Las Vegas Ron, I like to call him, will be joining you to talk some more college football and NFL. Till then, go grab a cold one. And to the boys here, the 3 men in the box, we can't thank you enough. And we will see everyone